Hypercharges are really fun, we can all agree with that. But there are just certain mechanics of the Hypercharge that are just beyond broken, unhealthy, toxic for the game. So today I'll be fixing the top 10 most broken Hypercharges in Brawl Stars. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and let's start with Gale. Now, I know that Gale isn't exactly meta right now, but we cannot deny the simple power that this Hypercharge has. It's just so good, honestly. Because it makes your super wider, it gives you more damage, and you shoot two supers, which not only means double the knockback, it means a longer knockback as well, because there is a very tiny delay between both supers, so you can push enemies even further. And on top of that, you get double the charge rate, which just helps you to cycle the same Hypercharge super even more, which is just so disgusting, honestly. So for me personally, the rework that I would do would be fairly simple. The Hypercharge super would still have the larger width, but now, instead of just being two supers, it would be that the Hypercharge super would have double the range. What does this mean exactly is that you could push people really far in the map. This could be actually really fun. Just imagine pushing a Frank nearly all the way back to spawn. Now, I know that this is a very niche situation because it's very hard to always get value from a really long pushback because they'll just eventually hit a wall, and that's when the value of the Hypercharge ends. So in order to fix this tiny issue, the Hypercharge rate would be buffed from 25% to 35%. So instead of needing a whopping 4 supers, because it was fair for what the Hypercharge did, now it would cost 2.85 supers, making the Hypercharge way much less toxic. Honestly, kinda more fun because it would for sure be really funny to once in a while throw one of the enemies back into spawn with just one super, and it would be an easy to land super, and honestly, I think that this is just a way much better design for Gale's Hypercharge. Next on the list we have Hank, and Hank, even though I know the Hypercharge got nerfed and it's now no way near as broken, not even close. I would even go as far as saying that the Hypercharge it's almost underwhelming. Sometimes it even misses the hits at maximum range. It's honestly kind of weird now, but this is one of those Hypercharges that shows the problem of the original super, because I mean, you can do some pretty insane stuff with Hank's super, which were only really acceptable because Hank was already a bad brawler. So a bad brawler being able to one-shot certain characters in a very specific situation is not the end of the world, but a really good brawler being able to team wipe the enemy team obviously won't make it a bad brawler. That brawler will become broken, and that's what happened with the Hypercharge. But the problem of the Hypercharge is not really the Hypercharge itself, because it's not the end of the world to get a guaranteed hit, but the problem is the recharge rate and the insane amount of damage that you can deal with this Hypercharge. So here are the changes that I would do to this Hypercharge, because honestly, reducing the homie, I hate it. I really loved, and I thought that the Hypercharge was fun. So let's make the Hypercharge fun again. The home would go back to what it was, but now there would be a lot of nerfs to compensate such thing. To start off, the bonus damage would be completely removed, so no bonus damage on this Hypercharge, which I know it breaks the logics of the Hypercharge. All Hypercharge have stat buffs, and I generally do not care because this is my video, so yeah. Secondly, the bonus shield and the bonus speed would both be reduced from your current stats to 15%. Another nerf to the stats because the ability is really good, and honestly, if there is one thing that Clash Royale did right, was making evolutions based on abilities and not stat buffs. And finally, actually doing some changes to his super. His super damage would be cut in half, so instead of being 2640, it will now be 1320, but it will now have a tiny pushback and a 1 second slow. Imagine this like a hyper gadget, honestly, but like 6 of them at the same time. The super would still deal a lot of damage at very close range, but it would no longer deal like a Ballerdian amount of damage. It would no longer be able to one-shot a Frank, or a Hank as well actually, with that super, and has every single time, a damage nerf implies a charge rate nerf, so the recharge rate would also be reduced by 50%. And this is more important than you can think, because now, even if you hit all 6 projectiles, you would no longer get the super back. This means that while you're hypercharged, yes, you would have guaranteed damage and a guaranteed knockback to the enemies, but realistically speaking, 1400 damage, it's not a lot, but the guaranteed knockback could be really nice. That combined with the stat nerfs, I generally think that the Hypercharge would be both fun because you would have that guaranteed 360 around the map knockback, but it wouldn't just shred the entire enemy team. It wouldn't be a guaranteed team wipe, but you would see your super being insanely impactful against the entirety of the enemy team. And if you're lucky, and if you still hit a reasonably charged main attack, you might even get a second Hypercharge super during the actual Hypercharge. Next we have Sam, and Sam, it's such a stupid story to a Hypercharge. Mortis appeared and had the exact same thing as Sam. It was busted. Then they give the same effect to Sam's Hypercharge, call it a day, and then, because it was insanely broken obviously, they decide to send it to a cost of 5 supers. That's dooming a Hypercharge to failure. Fang's Hypercharge, Surge's Hypercharge, and now Sam's Hypercharge, like, these 5 super cost Hypercharges will never see the day of light in an even B tier, because they just cost too much. And obviously, because Sam's Hypercharge is just so broken, it's fair to have this cost, but the Hypercharge doesn't deserve to be like this. It's just not fun, which is the whole idea of Hypercharges. So I would do the following rework. The Hypercharge recharge rate would be now the regular, so it would recharge the same as your regular super. But now, while Hypercharge and while you're separated from your gauntlets, there would be an electric bound between both of you. Imagine these like Goblin Stein Clash Royale's ability. If you're not understanding exactly what I'm saying, this is like the perfect example, honestly. And this electric bond would deal 400 damage every 0.25 seconds. Like Carl's super, it would deal damage and it would also recharge your super. And it would recharge half of what your tiny punches recharge. This would still give you a faster cycling super, but no way near as broken as the Hypercharge now makes it. So I think that this would be a really good rebalance. And if the Hypercharge is still too strong, then in that case reduce the bonus damage, because bonus stats are honestly always a big problem. And actually I just want to do this final statement. One of the reasons why the Hypercharge is so good, it's because your last super, if you end up losing the Hypercharge middle the travel time of that super, you can actually get an insane amount of recharge rate of the Hypercharge, and I think this is one of the reasons why they actually went so aggressive on the charge rate of the Hypercharge. Just one final small curiosity. You know what else is a small curiosity? The fact that most of you watching are not subscribed. How could you? If you're liking the content, please make sure to subscribe. It takes a long time to make these videos and I really appreciate it. And while you're doing that, keep watching more content in the channel and join our Discord server. Link in the description. Thank you. Next we have Mortis, and if I just spend a little bit talking about Sam and why it's a horrible idea, Mortis, it's just it honestly on steroids. I understand what you're trying to do, making a brawler that will never be balanced, being balanced because you'd have one moment to truly shine and be unstoppable. But it's just too strong, man. The super pierces through walls. It seems like they forgot that. You can team wipe so easily and so consistently. If you have 2 brain cells at least, but like it's just way too strong, the Hypercharge. So here's what I do, because honestly the super coming back, it's just not good. It just cannot happen. So now there will be a lot of different stuff about the Hypercharge. To start off, let's start with some good nerfs, because that's what this Hypercharge mostly needs. The bonus speed and the bonus shield would both be completely removed. So now if you want to move fast, you will need to use your dashes. And finally, and honestly, most importantly, your super will no longer come back. That's like the whole point of what I'm trying to say here. So obviously, the coming back would be gone. As for the buffs, it would be simple. While Hypercharge, you would always have the long dash, keeping the Hypercharge honestly pretty fresh and kinda fun. Like, just imagine just always having that long dash would be really cool. Not to mention that that's kinda of the reason why the bonus speed would also be removed. Your Hypercharge super now would actually apply anti-heal to the enemies, a 75% anti-heal for 9 seconds. Just for curiosity, this is actually Byron's first star power, and considering that bats usually have disease, some very popular disease if I am correct, like it makes sense for the bats to apply some sort of anti-heal or poison, or personally I would go for the anti-heal. And finally, your basic attacks would now also be charged with the bats from the Hypercharge. This means that all of your basic attacks would have the lifesteal of your super effect, and all of your basic attacks would also apply the 75% anti-heal. So essentially, you would be quite undefeatable, but you just really need to focus on dealing damage, because potentially one missed attack, because you have the bonus damage and the lifesteal onto the basic attacks, one missed attack could be more than enough for the enemy team to kill you. So there would be a fair amount of skill involved into hitting these attacks and the super to gain the maximum amount of value. Because remember, you still have the bonus damage, so it's fundamentally necessary for these Hypercharges to be good for you to land your basic attacks. Wow, skill to Hypercharges. What will they add next? Speaking of skill, now we have the polar opposite. Terra's Hypercharge super, it's broken. Like, I know that most people don't talk about this because, well, Terra hasn't been good, but because of the most recent charge rate buff, I am sure that people will now be talking about how strong this Hypercharge is. It charges really fast, and again, this is one of those guaranteed team wipes. There isn't really much you can do against this Hypercharge super. So honestly, the only thing that I can truly think of, it is the following. Your super would still be the exact same, but now it would have the larger explosion radius, because in case you don't know, your Hypercharge explosion radius is actually a lot bigger, so it's a very weird inconsistency honestly with the regular super. So I would actually keep that inconsistency, but I would remove the bigger area overall, making the Hypercharge as easy to land as it used to be. It's now, although, easier to recharge because it's easier to get the knockback onto the enemies. But the most important reward to this Hypercharge is that now the super duration would be increased from 1 second of pulling the enemies to 2 seconds. Plus, the pulling strength would actually be reduced by 40%. So the Hypercharge super would have more area control. It would stun the enemies for longer technically, allowing you and your teammates, if you're at the right spot at the right time, to get an easier team wipe. The Hypercharge would still have the same potential, but now it would require you to be a lot more aware of how much ammo you have, and if your allies are with you or not, because if they are not, you won't really get that much value from your Hypercharge super. Not to mention that the weaker area would make it harder to pull as many enemies as it used to do. This is why I won't be nerfing any stats on this Hypercharge. Now we have the OG broken Hypercharge. The first ever Hypercharge to be so powerful, so broken that it got its charge rate to 5 supers. And I'm talking about Fang's Hypercharge. It's deserved. This Hypercharge, it's such a guaranteed team wipe. And the worst part is that it doesn't require any skill. The big thing about Fang's super is that if you hit a wall, congratulations, you just wasted your super. But if you don't, you will get so much value. And this Hypercharge removes that layer of skill that honestly should never be removed. So what I would do would still to be remove a little bit of skill, but not that much. What I am saying is that the Hypercharge super would now have infinite bounces. It's not like Evil Electro Dragon when you can bounce to someone that already got bounced, but what I am saying is that if there is like 10,000 troops coming in your direction, you will hit your super to those 10,000 troops. Why does it sound like I'm talking about Clash of Clans suddenly? So with this being said, the Hypercharge would obviously be a lot weaker because now it would no longer pass through walls, so something would have to be done. And the charge rate would be increased from 20% to 30%. So instead of costing 5 supers to get this Hypercharge, it would instead only cost 3.33, which is still a lot, but considering that you have a fair amount of bonus stats, 15% bonus damage, 15% bonus shield, and 25% bonus speed, Infinite Super Bounce by itself honestly doesn't really justify the super being that much more expensive. And with this being said, you could have Fang Hypercharge a lot more often in the match, obviously potentially not getting that much value, but it would make using Fang Super never a race because it didn't matter how many enemies there were, you were going to hit all of them. Next we have one that I personally hate when it's on the enemy team, which is Gray. Gray's Hypercharge, it's the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. If you don't play ranked, it's probably hard for you to understand why, but essentially there are a couple of hot zone maps where you can just put both of the portals and essentially have a free win. Like, it's sometimes just literally impossible to defend double portal. Impossible! Like, I'm not joking, just go Jackie Gray, Frank Gray, any tank Gray works. It's way too broken. Obviously, it's cool to have 2 portals, but also the fact that you will always have those 2 portals in the field, it really opens the game to some insanely cheesy compositions, and I really do not like that. So, the only change that I really do to the Hypercharge is to the actual Hypercharge stat effect. So, now instead of being 2 portals, it would be that your Hypercharge super would teleport, the same way it teleports you when you use the super, it would teleport all of your allies to the other portal. So, if you have played for a while, you might remember that Gray, when he originally came out, he actually could teleport allies with his baseline super immediately. And that made him very cheesy. But no way near as cheesy as with this Hypercharge. And the thing is, having a temporary teamwork teleportation, it really doesn't sound that broken. And the more I think about it, the more balanced I think it is, honestly. Because having all of your teammates teleported and gaining 1000 shields has a Hypercharge, it's a really oppressive play, but that's what Hypercharges are in the end of the day. And it's counterable. It's not like you will never know, and it requires a lot of teamwork ability, very similar to Max's Hypercharge. It's good, but most of the randoms of nowadays won't really know that you can do that. So honestly, I think that this is the perfect rework for Gray's Hypercharge. Next we have Melody, and I will say this is the weirdest rework I would do. So her Hypercharge, it's really strong. Especially in Heist and in Pro Play, it's a really strong Hypercharge. Like if Melody wasn't strong enough already. So the rework that I would do to the Hypercharge is very simple. Instead of being you gain extra notes whenever you super, while Hypercharge, whenever you would super close to someone, so if the enemy was within that super range, they would actually get themselves a monster note floating around them. And this would also be applied to your basic attack. So while Hypercharge, whenever you connected one basic attack, not only you would get your regular monster note floating around you, but the enemy would get one purple Hypercharge monster note floating around them. Not being able to damage the enemy himself, but if he's not careful, he would actually damage his own teammates. And this would be an interesting Hypercharge, because not only it makes sense considering that Melody, it's all about music, so in a certain way music could contaminate the enemies with the Hypercharge, making the enemies actually deal damage to their own teammates because of the effect of the Hypercharge. It would for sure be a quite skillful Hypercharge in my opinion, especially if you do not connect any supers or basic attacks while Hypercharge, but I can definitely see this being a really good Hypercharge and nowhere near as toxic because it wouldn't really help you to deal more damage to one single enemy, but it would allow you to potentially team wipe because the enemy team might not play well against all of the monster nodes and they could accidentally kill each other. And finally we have Chester. And his Hypercharge, it is another essentially guaranteed team wipe. Not as easy as Morty's Hypercharge, but still pretty good. And on top of that, this Hypercharge also has area control. Both with the slowing super has the toxic super. And the whole point of the Hypercharge it is for it to be a combination of weaker supers, but truth being said, it's not it. Most of the times it doesn't really feel like that. So what I would want it is for justice to be made about its actual name. Make it all of the 5 supers combined into one, and do not worry, there would be more than fair nerfs to that. The idea it is the following. Your super would no longer have bonus damage, and with super I also mean the Hypercharge completely. No more bonus damage and no more bonus shield. The only thing that the Hypercharge would give you would be bonus speed, which it's already quite good considering what Chester does. And now, with the reduced bonus stats, or non-existent bonus stats, you can actually do some good stuff to the super. Now, the slowing area that the super creates would also heal you and your teammates by the same amount. Again, fusing the healing super to the rest of the Hypercharge. And on top of that, the Hypercharge would stun enemies for half a second, a weaker version of the stun super. And now, the Hypercharge would have all 5 supers combined. Now, this Hypercharge is just honestly really good before this rework, because it's just too much damage. The poison, the explosion, and the slowing, you can essentially kill anything in the game. And honestly, one of the best things about this Hypercharge is that it's very recharge friendly while you're Hypercharge. And on top of that, if you do not like the super that you have right now, you have the bonus advantage that the Hypercharge essentially swaps as your super. So in my eyes, fusing all of the supers together, it's for sure the way to go, with insanely reduced stats, because those stats are just what really make this Hypercharge just unbearable to deal with. And there you have it, all of the most broken Hypercharges reworked. I honestly would like to rework honestly all of the Hypercharges, but that would be way too long of a video. And there are just honestly so many other broken Hypercharges, but for the sake of length of the video, I decided to just resume it to these top 10. What are your thoughts? Write your opinion in the comments down below. Trust me, I will read them. If you like, do not forget to subscribe, join our Discord server, and I'll see ya on the next video.